Over the last couple months, we've had a number of you come to us and say, is coronavirus a sign of the end times? And over, people are like, are we getting closer? These are birth pains, right? And all these things are going on. It's like, and I'll tell you, the stuff that's going on is kind of crazy. We're gonna get into some of that today. But I wanted to start with something that happened half a year ago, October 18th, 2019, about 2 months before coronavirus was discovered in Wuhan, China, New York City did something interesting. They had a global pandemic exercise, and they gathered all the greatest and smartest peoples for a think tank to figure out what to do with what came next. And they actually had fake news reports that were there just not to spread fake news, but to kind of simulate that. Watch this little clip here.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree, unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
Okay, go back to that last slide. That was 2 months before coronavirus, COVID-19, was on the scene. Now, people, you may remember when it first came out, there's been, you may have coronavirus news fatigue at this point, but when it first came out, they were explaining that SARS and MERS and all these others are coronaviruses. And so they knew another coronavirus could happen. They didn't know what, but they chose that this was gonna be a coronavirus and they're gonna practice what would happen. And so they didn't have a Dr. Fauci, and they didn't have these other, they just had some people. And they talked about what they would do. Obviously, it did a lot of good because we've been in crazy times for the last 4 months. My point is, some people are like, oh, I see, it was a conspiracy. Conspiracy or not, that's not really the point. The point is they knew these diseases are something that recur and they keep coming back. They keep coming back. And they were saying, we need to prepare. Does the Bible predict the end times? Well, it seemed like they were. They were predicting the end times virus. But we live in unprecedented times. Can you imagine, can you think of any other time where the world has been shut down? The world. There's no time in history where we've seen the entire world shut down, stopped. We live in unprecedented times. This is definitely something new. This is not like, Pastor Dave mentioned earlier, especially if you've been around, if you're a bit older and you remember Hal Lindsey and you remember, the book 88 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back in 1988 and all those crazy things that happen. There's a bit of fatigue sometimes, but something's happening now. Something definitely is happening now. And how do we prepare? Now, I want to give you just a couple slides and a couple just news reports. Each one of these, I could give you a Bible verse that the Bible talks about would be happening in the last days. Locusts, plagues of locusts across Africa, Middle East, and now going into India. You can go on this next slide here. This one just shows it as it had gone, but just this last month, it's gone into India, and they're having a food shortage crisis in the second largest country in the world. Famines. Israel regathered into the land in 1948. In 1948, there were 6% of the Jews of the world lived in Israel. Today, over 40% of Jews, worldwide Jews, live in Israel. Last month, there were more inquiries from American Jews to immigrate, it's called Aliyah, to Israel, than any single month ever in the last two decades. Jews are being called back to the nation of Israel. There's just something stirring in them to go home. How about the next slide here? Signs in the heavens. Today, and actually yesterday, there was a ring of fire, an annular eclipse, where the moon is just a little bit further away than normal, and an eclipse, which creates this ring of fire. Is that a sign? The Bible talks about some things like that. Next slide. World Economic Forum is saying in June 3rd, they said, they had an article, now is the time for the Great Reset. Basically, you notice that most stores, they don't want your cash because your cash may have COVID. So everything's digital. We're going to a digital currency. Didn't realize that COVID was going to be that thing that was going to usher in that digital currency. Why is digital currency important? Because the world leader is going to have control over buying and selling. And the best way to control buying and selling is to make it all digital, and I can shut your account off. You had those credit cards stopped, right? You've had that happen. The result is you're out of luck. You're toast. They're saying the World Economic Forum, there needs to be this global reset. Now is our time to rewrite the world as it should be. This is what they're planning. Gordon Brown, a former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, has urged world leaders to create a temporary form of global government to tackle the twin medical and economic crises caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. And he believes countries can't deal with this effectively on their own, but that there should be some sort of coordinated effort to fight it. He added, quote, we need some sort of working executive. We need a CEO of the world, is what he's calling for. That's from Mark Hitchcock's book, Corona Crisis. We live in a time where people are they're looking for somebody to kind of bring it all together. Who could that be? In the tech world, Elon Musk says we are, just this week, or last week, he said, we are a year away from creating the $6 million man through implanted chips. The $6 million man, they've implanted chip, and basically they will turn on your paraplegic legs that have been paralyzed. A year away. They've got the chips, they've got the technology, they can turn it on and animate people that have had accidents and so forth. They're talking about quantum dot tattoos with vaccinations. These micro tattoos, yet you can't see, and yet so you could get a vaccination. If they develop the COVID vaccination, you could get the vaccination and you could have a mark on you so that we could see that you're safe. And then you can travel, is what they're talking about. So this mark that could be, you could get that tattoo. It's, like I said, you couldn't see it, but you could get it on your hand, or maybe you get it on your forehead, so they could just do a scan. They could do basically it's a cell phone, could even scan it and determine, do you have, in a sense, a passport or an identity so that you can travel. Controlling travel, controlling even buying and selling, controlling whether you can go out, whether you've had the vaccine. Famine, we already talked about that. We've got Great Depression level unemployment in some states, in some areas. Depression, Americans, survey just came out, Americans are more unhappy than they've ever been in the last 50 years. Only 14% of Americans said that they are happy. Yet, this is what's crazy, 80% say that they're content with their financial situation. So I'm unhappy, 86% say I'm unhappy, but 80% say I'm content with my financial situation. The only reason they're content is because they recognize that there's other people that are completely out of a job or lost their business, and they're like, you know what, I'm glad I've tightened my belt, but I feel grateful that I've got what I've got. And yet we're still unhappy. Pandemic has also led to a porndemic. And finally, an increase in lawlessness. That's easy to see those last few weeks. Defund the police, abolish the police, Chaz, riots and looting in many cities across the United States, a film release that depicted Jesus as a lesbian. All of these things happening just in the last few weeks. And what was the name of the Antichrist in 2 Thessalonians? He is the man of lawlessness. Lawlessness is abounding and accelerating. And the idea of defunding the police or abolishing the police, I don't think is going to help. It's not going to help the lawlessness. I know there's a whole debate there. Check out Pastor Dave's message from last week. These situations and these diseases, these plagues are not something new. Biblical plagues are actually, we see it in the book of Exodus. Of course, there's the plagues on Egypt. There was also plagues during David's day. A couple times. Here in 2 Samuel 24, verse 8. So when they had gone through all the land, they came to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. David had basically said, I want you to take a census of all the land. I want you to take a census and tell me, how many warriors do I have? How many fighting soldiers do I have in the land of Israel? Now, that was against the law. He wasn't supposed to do that, against the Torah. He wasn't supposed to do that without making a special offering. And basically, David was getting puffed up with pride. So this census was showing that he had lost his senses. Sorry. So Joab, his commander, gave the sum of the numbering of the people to the king. In Israel there were 800,000 valiant men who drew the sword, and the men of Judah were 500,000. But David's heart struck him after he had numbered the people. And David said to the Lord, I've sinned greatly in what I've done. But now, O Lord, please take away the iniquity of your servant. I have done very foolishly. This is one of those cases where he realizes he did it, he hears the number, and then all of a sudden he's convicted. God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Lord. I'm sorry I did it. But there's consequences for sin. Listen to the consequences. Verse 11, and when David arose in the morning, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Gad, David's seer, saying, Go and say to David, thus says the Lord, 3 things I offer you. Choose one of them that I may do it to you. So Gad came to David and told him and said to him, Shall 3 years of famine come to you in your land? Or will you flee 3 months before your foes while they pursue you? Or shall there be 3 days of pestilence, disease in the land? Now consider and decide what answer I shall return to him who sent me. Then David said to Gad, I am in great distress. Let us fall into the hand of the Lord, for his mercy is great, but let me not fall into the hand of man. So the Lord sent a pestilence on Israel from morning until the appointed time, and there died of the people from Dan to Beersheba, from north to south, 70,000 men in 3 days. When the angel stretched out his hand toward Jerusalem to destroy it, the Lord relented from the calamity and said to the angel who was working destruction among the people, It is enough. Now stay your hand. Wow. There's 1.3 million fighting men in Israel. David sins, and as a consequence of his sin, 70,000 men lost their lives. Wow. 5% of the nation. Basically, everybody knew somebody that was struck dead within 3 days. Amazing. And yet, there have been many plagues of this type throughout history. The Justinian plague in the 6th century killed as many as 50 million people. Perhaps half the global population died during that century. The Black Death of the 14th century, likely caused by the same pathogen, may have killed as many as 200 million people. Smallpox may have killed as many as 300 million people in the 20th century alone. 50 to 100 million people died in 1918 from the Spanish flu pandemic. And that Spanish flu, 1 in 3 people got sick. 1 in 3 people caught that flu. Now, the amazing thing is only 50 to 100 million people died, but it's still 50 to 100 million people. This coronavirus is only a wake-up call. So I've got good news and I've got bad news. The good news is this ain't the end. The bad news is it's going to get worse. But I've got good news. Jesus is still on the throne. Got better news. Jesus is coming back. And so what news are we going to listen to? As Dave was mentioning this week, when this whole thing started, a couple months ago, I started getting a digest, a news digest, a daily digest from several different news sources. And it's so amazing. One headline says this, another news headline, a different source says the exact opposite thing. I'm like, whoa, what? And then I read it, and they both have the same start, but they take it a completely different conclusion. The news headlines, most of the time, are not the news. They're the narrative that they want you. Whichever side, right or left, conservative, liberal, whoever you want to listen to, it's whatever they're trying to sell you, whatever they're trying to tell you. That's not who you need to be listening to right now. I'm not saying stick your head in the sand, but I am saying stick your head in the Word. Because we need faith, not fear. And the more we sow into that fear, the more we listen to that fear, if that's what you're listening to all the time, it makes you afraid to just go outside. It makes you afraid to do anything. We need to listen to the Lord and what is He saying. And you already heard that mini sermon that Pastor Dave gave just a little bit ago. So you're getting a second sermon today on some other things. All right, so here's what's going on. We just talked about these different viruses and these flus and all that stuff. In terms of epidemics, all right, in terms of these diseases, in the last 40 years, there's been 6 in the last 40 years. You notice how I was saying it's like almost, every once a century or so. Yeah, there's a bad one once a century or so, but in the last 40 years, there have been 6 for which we really haven't found vaccines or cures. First being AIDS, then SARS, swine flu, MERS, Ebola, and finally COVID-19. Interesting. There does seem to be an acceleration. We're getting more of them. We are in this age, we're in this time where we have antibiotics. We feel invincible because we can go to the doctor. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, what did you do? You went to your prayer closet. And you found often better results. Your faith was stretched. But today, we go to our doctors and we trust the science and have problems. Well, the Bible does describe days like these, but are we there? Are we there yet? Is this the sign of the end times? Let's turn your Bibles to Matthew 24. We're going to be in Matthew 24 and Revelation 6. These two passages are fascinating passages. They're told from two different perspectives. Matthew 24 is one of the final sermons of Jesus before he was crucified. And Revelation 6, a vision that the Apostle John sees on the island of Patmos. We pick it up in Matthew 24, verse 3. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Now, I love this. You have to remember, Jesus hasn't left yet. So they're already asking him, "Hey, Jesus, when are you coming back?" He had just told them at the Last Supper, "Hey, guys, this is what's going to happen. I go to prepare a place for you. I'm going to go, but then I'm going to come back." And so now they're saying, "Okay, we understand you're going away, but when are you coming back? When is the end? When are you going to usher in the Messianic kingdom that we've all been waiting for?" Verse 4, Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray. For many will come in my name saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you're not alarmed, for this must take place. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. And all these are but the beginning of the birth pains." That's just the beginning. Verse 9, "Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come." So the good news is we got a little while before the end. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen. The birth pangs, are they starting? Well, let's look now at Revelation 6 and just hear some of the similarities. Revelation 6, verse 1, "Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures say with a voice like thunder, 'Come.'" Now, I want to remind you, we're skipping into Revelation here. Most Bible teachers believe that Revelation 6 is the beginning of the tribulation, okay? The tribulation period, that 7 years of the time on earth when the judgment of God comes. The last 3.5 years is when, particularly when the judgment of God comes, but there's 7 years of really hell on earth, the tribulation. And so chapter 6 is really kind of the beginning of that, and it says that there's a creature that says, come. Verse 2, and I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, come. And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, come. And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius. Don't harm the oil and the wine. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, come. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider was named Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over 1/4 of the earth to kill with sword and with famine and with pestilence and by wild beasts of the earth. You may have heard of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This is the passage where we get that. The 4 horsemen. The first horseman is this white horse, and it's basically this Antichrist figure. The Antichrist. He comes in, and it says that he comes in with a bow. The Hebrew term is the covenant, where we get the rainbow idea. Interesting that he comes in with a bow. You can take that a lot of different directions. But the bow, he comes in, he doesn't have any arrows with him. All right? It doesn't show, the other ones have weapons, but this guy doesn't have it. It seems that he comes into power through peace, but he comes in to conquer. The second one is a red horse, its rider permitted to take peace, and we see war. The third comes, and he's a black horse, and it says he's got a pair of scales. And then it says a quart of wheat for a denarius. Basically, this scales is indicating worldwide inflation and famine. It says a quart of wheat for a denarius. A denarius was a day's wage. Imagine working an entire day to get a loaf of bread. We're talking famine like you've never, or inflation like you've never seen. Unless you were around in Germany in the 1920s. Now, if you were around in the 1920s, you'd be 100 years old, okay? I don't think we have any of those anyway, those people. But they literally had, in the Weimar Germany, 1 trillion% inflation. You're like, you're crazy, you're full of it. No, over like a 6 to 7 year period, what took, let's say, $1 to buy, 7 years later took $1 trillion to buy. They called them marks. But the inflation had gone crazy. Now, if you had a mortgage on your house, it's like, great, I can pay off that mortgage. But then again, if you're making less money, you're not able to buy anything. They weren't able to buy bread. They work an entire day. Think of what you make in a day, and that's how much you have to pay for a loaf of bread. That's what they're describing. But notice it says also, and don't harm the oil and the wine, meaning that the rich people, they're doing okay. They're doing okay. Finally, the fourth horse is this pale horse, or some versions say green or yellow, or it's basically it's an ashen, sickly colored horse. And this horse is one that says its rider's name is Death, and Hades followed. Hades, some of the translations may say hell. Basically, that's the abode of the dead that don't know Jesus, okay? So here's this horse coming, and it says it's given authority over 1/4 of the earth to kill with sword, with famine, and with pestilence. 1/4 of the earth. That's about 2 billion people right now. COVID? It's not even close to that. We're talking, and there's many Bible teachers you can read online, and there's like, this is the pale horse, the pale horse, the pale. No. This is not the pale. COVID is not the pale horse. COVID is not that sign. It could be a sign, but it's not that sign. That sign, that's crazy. 1 out of 4 people? That's a crazy time. Well, some of you are already taking pictures of the slides. Basically, when you lay Matthew 24 and Revelation 6 side by side, it seems like they're talking about the same thing. And it's later on that he says, these are the birth pains. So in Matthew 24, you got the false teachers in verses 4 and 5, and Revelation 6, you have the Antichrist. The false teachers, actually, it says false messiahs. They say that they're the Christ, actually is what it says in 4 and 5. And you got the white horse. 2, you got the wars. You got the seal, or the red horse, which is the war. And then famines in verse 7 of Matthew 24 versus the famines and inflation of the black horse, the pestilence, and pestilence, pale horse of that. We didn't go on to it, but on the next screen, you got Christian persecution is described in the rest of that chapter. And in Matthew, or in Revelation 6, the 5th seal, we have the martyred saints. We have the signs in the heavens, basically the sun and moon, there's signs. At the end of Matthew 24, we see that in the seal 6. And then finally, we see the angels gather the elect at the end of Matthew 24. And this is what's crazy. In Revelation chapter 7, actually it doesn't say what that, but it's Revelation 7, all of a sudden there's this great multitude that suddenly appears in heaven. Remember, John is caught up in this vision. He's seeing all these things unfold. He's looking down, seeing these horses, but he's up in heaven, and all of a sudden it says there's a great multitude in heaven. And he asks, where did they come from? Oh, they came out before the tribulation. That's not what it says. It says they came out of the tribulation. It says that not the 144,000, it says a great multitude that no one could count. So some of you are here today and you are diehard pre-tribbers. A pre-tribber believes that tribulation period, that the church is going to be raptured, caught up to meet Jesus in the air before the tribulation. I really hope that you're right. I do. I want you to be right. I really do. Somebody went to the bathroom. Okay. Okay, this one's working, so we'll go with this. Okay, so where was I besides lost? Okay, so Dave and I were ready. Dave and I were talking. I've taught through the book of Revelation a couple times, and I remember the first time I taught through it, I was 95% certain it was going to be a pre-trib rapture, and I taught it like that, and I believed it. I totally believed it. And the more I studied, there were still a couple chapters in the Bible and verses that just didn't fit, and so you have to shove them in to make it work on the pre-trib rapture, and that's just what happens. And so I was like, well, that's what it is. And I was in a denomination at that time that if you weren't pre-trib, you couldn't be a pastor, and I was a pastor, and I was in that denomination, so I believed the pre-trib rapture. And I believed it because I really did believe it. But then Dave and I started talking, and he started pushing back on some things. I started looking at some verses, and I'm like, you know what? When I read this, and I see this, Matthew 24 finally makes sense. If you do it chronologically, and you line them both up, all of a sudden then, the rapture is Revelation 7, and it's during the tribulation. Now, I don't know the day. And I don't think it's in the middle of the tribulation. Dave and I believe in what's called a pre-wrath rapture. In other words, before God pours out the wrath of God, it's not appointed for the church to suffer wrath. So before the wrath of God is pointed out, we are taken up. We are caught up to meet Jesus in the air, and we get to fly. Dun 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 bum bum dum. Yes, I want to fly now. I mean, the rapture is one of the most exciting. The rapture is going to be cool, but even cooler is we're not even going to look at the sky because we're going to be looking at Jesus. Yes. We're going to see Jesus, and he's going to be. It's going to be amazing. So that's what we look forward to. Now, I do hope it comes before the tribulation because I don't want to go through the tribulation. But when I read my Bible and when I look at church history, what I see that the church throughout history has been persecuted and suffered and martyred. And we have this thing in the United States that says that, well, we're American Christians and God loves me and he's going to take me out before it gets bad. The church for the last 2,000 years has not experienced that. They've experienced the exact opposite and suffered persecution. Persecution here is nothing yet. It's going to get worse. That's more bad news. But the good news is, he is going to take us out. We just don't know when. I do believe it's before the wrath of God. And yet, here's the deal. You know what? As pastors, we've got pastors on staff we got one of the pastors on staff that he's post-trib. He's like, he believes we're going to go through the whole thing. And I'm like, I hope he's wrong. But I also hope that I'm wrong and that we get to go at the beginning. But I don't know. All I know is I don't want to divide over it. I see these things, I see these verses, and I'm like, it should get us excited. It shouldn't get us fearful. It shouldn't get us afraid. It should get us excited, recognizing that Jesus is coming back, and we see these signs, we see these things lining up, and he's telling us. Now, I want to come back to our Revelation 6 passage. It says, when he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, come. I looked and behold a pale ashen horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him, and they were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword and with famine, and with pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth. Okay, we already talked about a fourth of the earth is killed, 2 billion people. And it says by wild beasts. Now, we live in a civilized society. Why would wild beasts all of a sudden just like, the iguanas mutate and they start to chase us? I mean, I've seen some iguanas chase some family members, but I don't think we're gonna die from iguanas. But most of the plagues throughout history have come from animals. The Black Death, it came from rats. The bubonic plague was from the fleas that were on the rats. Rabies is transmitted from dogs or bats. Rabies, did you know, is 100% lethal? 100% of the people that get rabies die unless they immediately get the medication to save their lives. Ebola has a 50% mortality rate. 50% of the people that are got Ebola died. Huge. Now, fortunately with COVID-19, it's not nearly as high as those, but imagine if something like Ebola with that virulence became airborne. Whew. Yeah, you could see what that Bible verse says. Now you're looking like, what in the world has he got up here? I was at a science museum and they had plush toys because these wild beasts, well, some of these wild beasts actually could be bacteria or viruses. So they make these. They make an Ebola virus doll. So here, Johnny, go play with Ebola. Go. COVID-19 is up at the top, and the flu is that pale ghost thing over there. And then I guess this is the Zika virus on the bottom to look like Brazil, I guess. Sorry for my Brazilian friends. Did you know, though, and speaking of beasts, do you know that mosquitoes have killed more people than anything else in the world? Because mosquitoes carry malaria, dengue, Zika, and so many other diseases. Mosquitoes. When we get to heaven, we're going to ask Jesus, why? 75% of all new diseases come from animals. On the average, there is one new disease every year for the past 30 years. But most of them are not, killing thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. So the question many people ask, is coronavirus a judgment from God? Is it a judgment? Is God judging us? Well, Jesus speaks to that. You look at Luke, chapter 13. There were some present at that very time who told him about the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. And he answered them, do you think that these, and this is Jesus speaking, do you think that these Galileans were worse sinners than all the other Galileans because they suffered in this way? No, I tell you. But unless you repent, you will all likewise perish. Or those 18 on whom the tower in Siloam fell and killed them, do you think that they were worse offenders than all the others who lived in Jerusalem? No, I tell you. But unless you repent, you will all likewise perish. COVID-19 is not, I don't believe it's a judgment. I mean, it could be a judgment, but I don't believe it's a judgment. I believe it's a wake-up call for a God that loves us so much that he desires that none should perish. And he's like saying, wake up, something worse is on the way. Wake up, get your life right with God now. Matthew 24, verse 8, all these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Honestly, when I look at the list and I recognize that Revelation 6 and Matthew 24, and I compare the two, I don't see that the birth pains have happened because I don't see the Antichrist. The Antichrist is not here yet. He's not had that peace treaty and he's not done all those things. So we're not in birth pains. We're actually in the Braxton Hicks. Yeah, so those of you, how many know what that is? Okay, there's a few guys that do, and it's because their wife sent them to the hospital, and then they get there, and it's just Braxton Hicks, go home. It's the false labor pains, all right? The uterus is learning the contraction, and yet it's not the real thing. And that can happen weeks or even a couple months before delivery. But I will tell you, the Braxton Hicks tells you that you're pregnant, and that something's coming. Something is about to be delivered. Matthew 24:34, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. All these things. Well, when does this generation start? Obviously, Jesus wasn't speaking to his generation because they all died 2,000 years ago. Who was he speaking to? He was speaking to the generation that begins to see these things. Well, we're seeing the Braxton Hicks. Does that mean it started? Well, I believe that there was a super sign on May 14th of 1948 to say, the hourglass. Hello, thank you. Satan doesn't want you to hear this, okay? All right, so, and the hourglass is turned over to start the clock, to tell you that something's going on. May 14th, 1948, what was going on May 14th, 1948? Israel was founded as a nation. For 2,000 years, they didn't have a people. They didn't have a homeland. They were not able to worship as freely. And yet God promised repeatedly in Jeremiah and Isaiah and other passages that he would call his people back. Remember I said at the beginning of this message that the Jews are returning to Israel like never before. 40% of all the Jews in the world live in Israel now. So what is going on? God said that I believe that's the time clock gets started. So then the question is, it says, this generation will not pass away till all these things take place. Some of you were blessed to be alive in May 14th, 1948, when that took place. That generation, those baby boomers, are starting to age. Well, how long is a generation? It used to be that they thought, well, a generation is 40 years because they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years, right? So maybe that's a generation. And so people said, oh, therefore it has to be 1988. 1948 to 1988 would be 40 years. And so they were certain that Jesus was going to come back then. And of course, I didn't see him, did you? Maybe I missed the memo. The Jehovah's Witnesses and many other people have set those dates, 1975, 1925, and over and over and over again, people saying, Jesus is coming back, Jesus is coming back. And we get numb to it. It's like, because it doesn't happen. But something is happening now. Now, how long is a generation? Well, a generation, according to Psalm 90, verse 10, the years of your life are 70, or even 80, or even by reason of strength, 80, yet their span is but toil and trouble. They are soon gone and we fly away. So David, writing by inspiration of the Holy Spirit, says that, and living 70 or 80 years if you're strong. So is that a generation? Possibly. I mean, even today, that's kind of an average lifespan, 80 or so. So if you take 80 years from 1948, 80 plus 48, what do you get? 2028, right? 48 to 28. Okay, so that means all these things happen by 2028. Okay, that's fine. That's still some time away. That means, but remember, if they all happen by 2028, and the tribulation is 7 years long, and that happens first, 28 minus 7 years is 2021. The tribulation starts. That's next year. Are you ready? Now, no man knows the day or the hour. And there's some people who say, I don't know the day or the hour, but I know the year. I'm not even saying that, okay? All I know, Jesus is coming back. But when I do the math, it's sooner than it was yesterday. It's sooner than it was 10 years ago. And God shutting the world down, something's coming. Someone is coming. Are you ready? Are you ready? Luke 21. And there will be signs in sun and moon and stars, and on earth distress of nations in perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves, people fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world. For the powers of the heavens will be shaken, and then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and with great glory. Now when these things begin to take place, straighten up and raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. What goes on? Two things. There are those that are going to be fearful. People fainting with fear and with foreboding of what is coming on the world. There's a lot of people that are gripped with fear. We're not to be people of fear. Instead, it says, now when these things begin to take place, when they begin, not when you're getting towards the end and it's like, okay, 7 years is almost up, we're out of here. No. When they begin to take place, straighten up, raise your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. Straighten up. If you knew Jesus was coming back tomorrow, what would you do today? What would you do differently today? Would you binge 8 hours of Netflix today? I gotta watch it before heaven. Really? Well, I don't think we're gonna see Tiger King in heaven. No. What would you do? What is God calling you to do? Tozer writes, a scared world needs a fearless church. That's what we need. That's what the world needs. Not a church that's cowering, afraid to meet. Not a church that's, I don't want to offend you. I don't want to get you upset. I don't want to step on your toes. No, a church that's ready, that's anxiously looking for Jesus to come. And because they're so excited about Jesus coming, they can't wait to tell people, get ready. People, get ready. Jesus is coming. So 1 John chapter 3, see what kind of love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. The reason why the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, because we shall see him as he is. What an incredible blessing and promise that we will be like Jesus. What amazing love that the Father has lavished on us, that we would be called children of God. That you can be called a child of God after all you've done, after all I've done. How amazing the grace of God. And verse 3, final verse, and everyone who thus hopes in him purifies himself as he is pure. If you know Jesus is coming, you get ready. We had some people coming over to our house a couple days ago. So what did we do? We cleaned. Yeah, you clean up, you pick up. I mean, people are coming. Now, if a head of state, if the president or a king or somebody was coming to your house, you get the new paint ready, you get everything ready, you get that honey-do list, and the whole family is getting the house ready. Well, I gotta tell you something. The King of Kings is coming. The King of Kings is coming. All right, you can let yourself in. No, but that's kind of our attitude. It's like, yeah, I know he's coming. And when he gets here, you just put a sign on, just come on in, you're family. Yeah, he's family, but he's more than family. And so you gotta be ready. You gotta be ready. God didn't give us prophecy to scare us, but to prepare us. Not to scare us, but to prepare us. If you're scared, if you're frightened today, that's probably evidence that you're not right with God. If you're not right with God, the scriptures say today is the day of salvation. Today is the day to make things right. If you've never turned your heart over to the Lord, you've never had your sins cleansed and washed away, then today is the day. Or maybe you have done that, but you've kind of wandered and you've kind of gotten involved in things that you shouldn't have gotten involved in, and touched stuff and looked at stuff and done stuff. Then today's the day to recommit and get right back with God. That's what today is. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for your precious promises in your word, that you tell us you're coming back. And even though things may get worse, you desire that none should perish, that you desire that no one in this room should leave this planet without you. And so God, right now, I pray that your Holy Spirit would just be present, knocking on people's hearts, quickening their hearts, shortening their breath, recognizing that they need you. For anyone in this room that has not turned their heart over to you, Lord, right now, touch them, speak to them. declare your grace and your love over them, that no matter what they've done, the blood of Jesus covers it all. That your death on the cross is enough to pay for every sin, small or great. With every eye closed, if that's you today, God's holding out on you. He's not holding back from you. He's holding out, waiting for you. He's not going to force you. He's asking you to surrender to him and say, God, forgive me. Turn your heart to him. If that's you right now where you are, simply raise a hand to the Lord. Praise God. Praise God. Who else? There are others. The Lord is knocking on your door. He's saying, get right. You don't know what lies outside. You don't know what awaits you. You don't know when your final day or final hour is. Today, right now, is the time to get right with him. Simply raise that hand to the Lord. Anybody else? Praise God. Praise God right now. Jesus flood through this place. Holy Spirit, come, release freedom, release healing right here, right now. Those of you that raised your hand right now, offer your own prayer to the Lord of commitment, that own prayer of surrender. He will forgive you if you simply ask. He already loves you. God, I pray for those that extended that hand right now. Father, may you touch them. And those that didn't extend that hand, that you're still working on, that you're still loving on, Father, may they not leave this place without talking to somebody and getting right with you. And Father, for everyone else, Lord, there's a point to this message. What's the point that you want to drive home in each of our hearts? God, speak to our hearts. Who is it that we need to talk to? Where is it that we need to confess? Where is it that we need to repent? Let the Holy Spirit just search your hearts right now. To search your hearts and see if there be any wicked way, and recognize that he is here to save and deliver.